Sugar, life's funny sometimes. It gives you sunshine and roses. And then one day, it hands you thorns you never saw coming. I used to believe love could fix anything. That if you baked enough pies, forgave enough lies, and smiled through enough tears, things would turn out fine. My name's Mae Thompson. I own a little flower shop on Maple Street in a quiet town just outside of Savannah, Georgia. For 35 years, I've been arranging bouquets for weddings, funerals, and everything in between. I always said flowers don't judge people, they just bloom. Sugar, life's funny sometimes. It gives you sunshine and roses. And then one day, it hands you thorns you never saw coming. I used to believe love could fix anything. That if you baked enough pies, forgave enough lies, and smiled through enough tears, things would turn out fine. My name's Mae Thompson. I own a little flower shop on Maple Street in a quiet town just outside of Savannah, Georgia. For 35 years, I've been arranging bouquets for weddings, funerals, and everything in between. I always said flowers don't judge people, they just bloom. But one morning, I learned something that made every petal in my shop wilt. Something that shattered my calm little world like a dropped vase. It all started with a phone call. It was a Thursday. I was trimming roses, humming to the radio, when my phone rang. Mae's blossoms, where every bloom tells a story. I said, the way I always do. But on the other end, it was silence. Then it was for Mae. You don't deserve this. It was Trisha, one of my regulars. She buys daisies every Sunday. Trisha, honey, what are you talking about? I laughed. Mae, she said, her voice shaking. I just saw your husband, Ray. He's not where he said he'd be. The scissors slipped from my hand. Ray was supposed to be in Atlanta for a landscaping conference. But according to Trisha, he was 2 blocks away, at the Garden Inn Motel, checking in with someone who sure as hell wasn't me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the kitchen window with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the rain. My mind played back 30 years of memories, the laughter, the backyard barbecues, the quiet Sunday mornings. Had it all been a lie? When Ray came home 2 days later, smelling like cheap perfume and guilt, I didn't say a word. I just smiled. Because I already knew, and I had a plan. The next morning, I went to my shop early. The smell of Lila filled the air, but they didn't smell sweet anymore. They smelled bitter. I opened my little black notebook, my revenge recipe book. I called it Later and started writing. Step 1, I wrote, act like everything's fine. For the next week, I did exactly that. I made his favorite breakfast, kissed his cheek, packed his lunch. Meanwhile, I quietly moved a few things around, like the lotion bottle on his dresser. You see, Ray had this habit. Every night, after his shower, he'd slather that fancy lotion on his hands. Said it made his skin soft from all the gardening. Well, let's just say I made a small substitution. I found an old industrial-strength adhesive at the shop, the kind I use for artificial arrangements when regular glue just won't hold. Thick, clear, and strong enough to bond wood. I cleaned out his lotion bottle and filled it with that glue, mixed with a little scent oil so it'd smell the same. Then I set it right back on the dresser and waited. Saturday morning, Ray came out of the shower humming, towel around his waist. Morning, sweetheart, he said, rubbing the towel over his head. Morning, I said, smiling over my coffee. He reached for his lotion, humming that same tune, and within seconds, I heard the sound, Mae. What the? It's not coming off. I turned slowly. There he was, his hands glued together, palms pressed tight like a man in desperate prayer. Oh, honey, I said sweetly, what's wrong? Something's wrong with my lotion. It's sticky as hell. I stood up, walked closer, pretending to look concerned. Oh, Ray, maybe it's just fate keeping your dirty hands where they belong. He froze. What did you say? I leaned in close, whispering, you might want to call that girl of yours at the motel. Maybe she can lend a hand. He turned red as a rose in June, Started shaking, tugging, cursing, begging. But the more he struggled, the worse it got. I'll never forget the sight. That man who once acted so proud, standing in our living room stuck to himself, sweating, panicking. Realizing he wasn't the hunter anymore, I almost felt sorry for him, almost died by the time the paramedics showed up. I'd made myself a cup of coffee and was sitting calmly on the porch. They ran inside, laughing before they could help him. One of them said, "Sir, we've seen some sticky situations, but this takes the cake." Another shouted from the hallway, "Hey, May, you got any acetone? We might need to dissolve his predicament." I handed them a bottle and smiled. "Oh, I've got plenty." Used it on dried glue, old regrets. Same difference. Ray was screaming, "May, stop laughing. Get me out of this." But sugar, sometimes karma's funnier than any joke. The paramedics couldn't stop chuckling the whole time. They had to cut his wedding ring off just to get him free. When they carried him out, his hands still half stuck. He gave me a look, somewhere between shame and disbelief. And I swear, even the paramedics were wiping tears from laughter as they loaded him into the ambulance. After that day, the truth came out faster than wildflowers in spring. The town found out, small towns always do. Customers whispered when they came to buy roses. Some tried to hide their grins. "May," one of them said, "you didn't just break his heart, you glued it shut." I smiled, arranging a bouquet of sunflowers. I just made sure he couldn't touch what wasn't his anymore. But behind the humor, something heavier lingered. At night, when the shop was quiet, I'd sit alone, surrounded by flowers, and think, how did I end up here? Was I a monster? Or just a woman who finally stood up for herself? And that's when I started to heal. Not by forgiving Ray, not right away, but by forgiving myself. For all the years I stayed quiet. For all the birthdays I spent waiting for a man who never truly saw me. I started planting again, not just flowers, but hope. I reopened the back garden behind my shop and called it the Healing Yard. Women from all over town started coming by, bringing their pain, their stories, their broken hearts. And you know what I told them? "Sweetheart, we all get glued to the wrong person at least once. But life's about finding the courage to unstick yourself and bloom again." They laughed. They cried. And sometimes they brought wine. In that little flower shop on Maple Street, I learned that revenge might make you feel powerful for a moment. But forgiveness sets you free. Still, every time I see a man eyeing another woman while holding his wife's hand, I can't help but grin and think, better check your lotion. Sugar. After that morning, life in Savannah didn't quite return to normal. When you've lived in a small town as long as I have, gossip travels faster than lightning in a summer storm. By lunchtime, everyone from the bakery to the barber shop knew that Ray Thompson, my husband of 30 years, had been rescued from his own lotion bottle. Some folks called it poetic justice. Others whispered it was divine payback. Me? I called it closure. But even closure can sting like a thorn before it heals. For days, the phone at the shop wouldn't stop ringing. Some people called pretending to order flowers just so they could ask, "May, is it true what they say about Ray?" I just smiled into the receiver and said, "Well, honey, let's just say he's learning that actions stick around longer than you think." I hung up and went back to arranging Lila. But deep down, between the scent of fresh blooms and the hum of my old radio, I felt a quiet ache. It wasn't guilt, no. It was grief. Grief for the woman I used to be. The woman who believed love was enough. That night, I sat in the flower shop long after closing. The rain tapped against the window, and I looked out at the wet streetlights reflecting like broken glass. That's when my son, Caleb, came by. "Mom," he said gently, stepping inside. He's 28, tall like his daddy used to be, but with my heart. He looked tired, holding a brown paper bag. "I brought dinner," he said. And I heard about Dad. I froze. I hadn't told him. But in a town like ours, nobody keeps secrets for long. He sat across from me, opened the bag, and handed me a sandwich. For a minute, we just ate in silence. Then he said quietly, "I don't know whether to laugh or cry." I smiled weakly. "That makes two of us," he sighed, looking at the bouquet on the counter. "You didn't deserve any of this." Mom, tears stung my eyes. Maybe not. But maybe I needed it to finally wake up. He reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself. By the end of the week, Ray's accident was the talk of every porch and coffee shop. Some said he'd moved in with that woman, though nobody had seen her since that day. Rumor had it she left town out of sheer embarrassment. As for Ray, well, he came to see me once. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. The shop was closed, and I was sweeping up petals. The bell over the door jingled, and there he stood, thinner, older, carrying that same guilty look he'd worn since the ambulance ride. "May," he said softly. I didn't answer. He looked around the shop, the flowers, the lights, the photos of us on the wall from years ago. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything." I kept sweeping. "Sorry doesn't include the past, Ray." He nodded, his eyes red. "I know. I ruined everything." I put the broom down, leaned on the counter, and took a deep breath. "You didn't ruin everything, Ray. You just ruined us. The rest, well, I'm still building it." He swallowed hard. "I miss you," he said. I looked at him, this man I once loved with all my heart, and I realized something. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't love him either. I had moved somewhere beyond both. So I smiled softly and said, "I hope you find peace, Ray, truly, but you won't find it here." He nodded, turned, and walked out. And that was the last time I ever saw him. Months passed. Spring rolled in, and the shop bloomed brighter than ever. Every color, every scent, tulips, daffodils, peonies, it all felt new again. Customers said my arrangements looked happier. Maybe because I finally was. I started a little group at the shop every Thursday evening. We called it Petals and Peace. Women from all over town came by, some divorced, some heartbroken, some just lost. We'd sip tea, share stories, and make flower crowns like little girls again. Sometimes we laughed till tears rolled down. Sometimes we just sat in silence, letting the flowers do the talking. One evening, a young woman named Clara told me, "Miss May, your story gave me courage. I left a man who treated me wrong." I smiled at her. "Good for you, baby. You deserve love that doesn't wilt." That night, after everyone left, I looked around the shop, at the flowers, the flickering candles, the laughter still echoing in the air, and I whispered to myself, maybe I was meant to break so I could bloom again. Behind my shop, I built something new, a small garden. Just a patch of land with benches, wine chimes, and wildflowers growing free. I called it the healing yard. People came to sit there not just for the flowers, but for peace. Sometimes I'd find letters tacked between the petals. One said, "Thank you for reminding me I'm strong." Another said, "You helped me laugh through my tears." Every note felt like sunlight on my soul. One Sunday, as I watered the roses, Mrs. Henson, an old friend, stopped by. She looked around the garden, smiling. "You've turned your pain into something beautiful, May." I nodded. "I just let it grow in the right direction." She chuckled. "And that man of yours, you ever think of taking him back?" I looked at the sky, the clouds drifting slow and kind. "No, sugar," I said. "Some things, once they break, you don't fix, you just plant something new over them." A year later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Ray. His handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged like teardrops. "May," it read, "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I've changed. I volunteer at a community garden now. Every flower I plant reminds me of you, of how you grew even after I hurt you." I folded the letter, held it to my chest, and whispered, "I forgive you, Ray, not for you, but for me." Then I walked out to the healing yard and buried that letter beneath the soil where the sunflowers grew. Because forgiveness, my dear, is just another seed. Now. Every morning, I open my shop, light a candle, and whisper to myself, "You made it." May, the bell rings, the air smells of roses, and laughter fills the place again. Sometimes tourists wander in, having heard the old story, the woman who glued her cheating husband. They ask if it's true. I just smile and say, "Well, honey, I'm not one to gossip." But let's just say he learned not to mess with a florist. They laugh, I laugh, and the story blooms again, not out of bitterness, but from strength, because that's what life is, sweetheart. You get hurt, you heal, and you grow stronger than before. So if you're listening to this, sitting somewhere with a heavy heart, remember Auntie Mae's words. You can't control who hurts you, but you can control how you bloom afterward. And if someone ever tries to break your heart, just smile. And keep your glue handy, metaphorically speaking, of course. Now, I spend my days surrounded by flowers, friends, and laughter. The woman who once cried herself to sleep now teaches others how to bloom again. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I whisper a prayer, not for revenge, not for justice, but for peace. Because forgiveness, my love, is the sweetest flower of all. This is Auntie Mae from Maple Street, signing off with one last piece of advice. Never underestimate a woman with a watering can and a plan.